At some point in life, I'm sure you've asked, why do I always do this? Why can't I change even when I know better? Why do I keep on returning to the same roles, reactions, relationships, even when I know they don't serve me? And the answers might seem like character flaws. Maybe you've said to yourself, I'm just too sensitive, or I've always been a people pleaser, or I'm not just good at confrontation. And it starts to feel like this is who you are. But what if it's not? What if these are not your identity, but just beliefs you've practiced so long, they've started to feel like facts? So, in today's episode, I want to draw a line between who you really are and who you were taught to be. Because if you don't separate your identity from belief, you'll keep on reinforcing a version of yourself that was built for survival, not freedom. Hi, my name is Campbell, and welcome to this episode of Breaking the Belief Trap. In the last episode, we explored the emotional root system, how beliefs are not just mental ideas, but emotional responses encoded in your body. Now, I want us to take it to the next step, reclaiming your identity from those beliefs. Because here's what happens. You experience something painful. You develop a belief in response to that pain. Then you repeat those behaviors that match the belief. And over time, that belief becomes your role. Your role then becomes your reputation, and your reputation becomes your identity. And then you forget it was ever a choice. Let me give you an example. Another one. So let's say you grew up in a household where love and attention were earned through achievement. So you performed, you achieved, you won approval. You then formed the belief that I'm only valuable when I succeed. That belief then became a behavior, hustle, perfectionism, people pleasing. That behavior then became your identity. So you say things like, I'm the responsible one, the overachiever, the dependable one. And here's the problem with that. Roles are not identities. They're responses. They're masks. They're adaptations you developed so that you could belong, to be safe, to be seen. And the danger in this is that when you confuse who you are with what you learned to do, you lock yourself in an identity that was never truly yours. Therefore, real transformation doesn't just mean changing your actions. It means reclaiming your original self beneath the role. This is why growth can feel so destabilizing, because letting go of old beliefs means letting go of a person you thought you were. It means grieving a version of yourself that served a purpose but no longer fits where you're going. And I want you to think about that for a second. So the version that kept the peace, that was survival. The version that kept everyone happy, that was a coping strategy. And the version that never asked for help, that was protection. But now you don't need to perform for love. You don't need to shrink to feel safe. You don't need to hustle to feel worthy. You don't need to suffer to feel deserving. And that means you're allowed to outgrow your old identity. Let me even be more specific. You're not just a procrastinator. You've learned to delay action as a buffer for fear. You're not just bad with money. You absorbed the beliefs that associate wealth with guilt, shame, or confusion. You're not emotionally unavailable. You've just been taught directly or indirectly that vulnerability leads to pain. These are beliefs, not truths. And they can be challenged. They can be rewired. They can be released. But first, they must be separated from who you believe you are. So here's a very simple yet powerful practice I teach my clients, and I call it the identity unpacking exercises. So I want you to take a plain paper, or you can go and download the download that I've given you. And I want you to do this. Write this sentence right on top of the page. I've always believed I am. I've always believed I am. Then I want you to ask these following questions. Where did that belief come from? Who told me that? What did it cost me to believe this? And what might become possible if I stopped? What might become possible if I stopped? And after you answer those questions, finally, I want you to write this sentence. That was a belief I learned. It is not who I am. That is a belief that I learned. It's not who I am. Got it? Because here's the truth. You were born whole. You were born worthy. You were born with gifts, instincts, and an identity untouched by trauma, shame, or social conditioning. But then life happened. You adapted. You learned how to be accepted. You learned how to stay safe. And slowly, you traded authenticity for approval. Therefore, your work now is not to create a new self, but to return to the real one, to shade light on who you really are, to question the masks, to release the labels, and to reintroduce yourself to who you were before the world told you who to be. And if you want to know how to install these new beliefs, ones that reflect not just who you want to be, but who you already are underneath the noise, I want you to watch this next video because you will learn how to rewire your inner system using intentional tactics that I'm going to teach you.